Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu OG Industry Shannon, and Will Warren Davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Welcome again to the Wot Supp podcast. We've got a very special guest for you today. It is Alicia Gowans, WBFF pro, 3 times world champion, 2 times Ms. USA. She is an international comp prep coach. She is a highly successful fitness model. She's the face of that many brands I'm not even going to get into and name them, but she is here with myself and Will on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, Ali.
Thanks for having us, man. What an intro. Can I just take you everywhere with me and let you blow me up before I even walk into a room? Or what? Love it.
Well, I don't know how much of an intro you really need. Like, I mean, obviously, people in the Australian fitness industry anyway already know who you are. You know, you've got just a massive following. Most of the girls that I know in the fitness industry seem to kind of put you on this Beyonce-like level. You know, I think you've got your kind of regular girl crush, and then you've got the Beyonce level. But yeah, so thanks so much for taking some time out of your schedule to chat to us, but I think we might just crack right into things.
Sounds good.
There's probably a couple, maybe some of the male listeners that we have or something who don't know the full extent of your story and all that sort of thing. But can you give us a quick rundown of Alicia Gowans 101? What's the story? Where did you come from? How did you start in this whole thing? And, you know, where is it at?
Look, I think I've been on so many podcasts and had so many interviews. There's probably, you know, lots of different background pieces, but to give you the footnotes, I've been in this game for a freaking long time. I think people tend to think that you pop up and it happens overnight, you know, like fairy dust, whatever the fuck that is. It doesn't work that way. It's been a good decade and a half in the making, right? For me to be sitting where I am with the level of success that I have. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. But I started in this industry a long, long time ago. I actually did it was the first ever qualification of its sort, and it basically saw you do a university degree or the first year of your human movement and exercise physiology across your year 11 and 12. So it was a complex sort of curriculum that got born about excellence in sport. So essentially it was, and this is where my whole blueprint for doing coaching came about, because it was effectively taking myself as the subject across my year 11 and 12 in my 3 Australian level representative sports that I played in, and bettering my performance. So basically improving my performance, my aesthetic, my absolutely everything across that 2-year period, utilizing, you know, the full scope of my first year of quals in that space. So my love for this and this whole side of things happened way back then. So it's been a long time in the making. I then pursued, though, because there was no real money in fitness back then, let me tell you, did the good thing that every, you know, young girl does and listens to parents, and went to university and studied commerce and went and did a whole corporate career first. But I had this stuff going in the sidelines. So I actually had 3 performance facilities over the course of my corporate career that I never had on my LinkedIn or anywhere, because it would have downgraded my credibility in what I did in corporate. Because back then, fitness really wasn't what it is today, right? There just wasn't the multi-billion-dollar industry that we now see and that we all take part in and enjoy. But what I had, though, was this passion for it. So I still had an interest in it, and it was just this hobby business. It was a very successful hobby business. I had 3 very, very well-performing performance facilities, but they were on the sideline to my corporate structure, until one day I woke up and went, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I had this person, I've talked about this in another interview once a while ago. I had this very accomplished mentor of mine. She was in her 60s, driving along to this board meeting with me, that stopped at this set of lights and out of nowhere turns to me and goes, Alicia, what's your legacy going to be? And I was at the top of my game in corporate, right? And I remember just sitting in this car at this time and I just started crying. And I'm not an emotional person. I'm just not that kind of girl. So I got out of the car. I looked at this woman and went, look, I'm sorry. I'm leaking and I can't fucking stop. And I don't know why. Can you give me a moment? I got out of my car and went, I had this moment. And Ben Pekalski, actually, BPAC and I have talked about this a lot. It's like an awakening, that moment of going, you know, there's incongruence. This isn't where I want to be, you know, like I'm not going to leave this legacy that I want. I'm not doing the things that I want to be doing. I'm helping fat cats get fatter and putting, you know, cream on the crop for a lot of these people that, you know, could replace me tomorrow. But I'm not really changing lives. And when I sort of got back into the nitty gritty of it after I left this woman on that day going, what the hell just happened to me? Because I don't ever leak like that. I had that moment of, right, what is this telling me? Like, this is clearly showing me something, like, because I couldn't work it out, right? I'm a bulldog, and I'm quite non-emotive with that sort of stuff. So I couldn't work it out. But I had these 2 solid days of really deep reflection and decided, okay, fuck it, I'm out. So I folded up a very successful international consulting company, fired a few people, which, you know, it wasn't great for them, but I went with my heart, and I basically folded it all down and went, hobby business now becomes main hustle, not side hustle. And I've never looked back, bro. Like, this has been my life and my love and my passion now ever since. So I've been doing this full time for about 8 years, but I had been doing it, like, this business, this entity that we sit inside of, has been going for 14 years. So It's not an overnight thing, you know. It was a side hustle that just got a lot more love.
I think there's a lot to be said for that too, right? Like, I remember myself when funny enough,
you first met me.
yeah. When I first met Alicia, we were both buying into the Gold's Gym Australia franchise.
Getting shafted.
we ended up getting shafted pretty badly. And I mean, I was already aware of who you were, you know, through your success in the WBFF already. You were the face of Gold's Gym Australia at the time. And I met Christos and had the pleasure of working with him a couple of times. So I was already aware of who you were when I first met you. But, you know, you weren't the, I guess, you know, the household name, if you will, that you are now. And it wasn't till sort of, you know, a little bit, not too long after that basically you know, we've all seen that video with Mike Tyson where they say, what happened to you? And he goes, I broke my back, spinal. She broke her back. Like you broke your back like a toothpick, right? The simplest way we can put it. How did that come about? Tell us about the injury, because this really was like a turning point moment in your evolution, right?
100% it was. So when we talk about those awakenings, right, I've had a couple of them in my lifetime, and I've been very fortunate that I'm very in tune, right, with mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically now. As a result of my injury, it's tapped me right in, like I dial right in. And I'm just one of those I'm an annoying fucking optimist. I'm a glass half full with heaps of room for more epic shit to be poured into it kind of person, right? Not a lot gets me down. So when the back break literally took my legs out from under me, like quite literally, it put me on my fucking ass, but it made me stop, because I'm a bit of a cyclone, 100 miles an hour, everything going, juggling every ball, won't always be present in the moment, won't always, back then had trouble with it, don't anymore. Would often, you know, maybe not see the forest for the trees at times. I think my back break was the biggest blessing in my life. Like, and I've talked about this a lot, and BPAC and I had a lot of conversations about this, that it was my awakening for slowing down, creating balance, but also more importantly, actually listening to my body and what it was trying to tell me. It was the breaking point for me to stop doing things where I would go above and around situations and instead work through them, right? And that comes on every level. It was mental, emotional, and physical. But it allowed me to build my best body ever, because it took me back to basics.
Yeah. Will, are you aware of how Alicia broke her back?
No.
What actually happened to you? So you don't know anything about this.
This is obviously assumed content, and I knew it was a big part. When Stu was hinting at a pretty major transformative sort of physical intervention.
It was huge.
So
it was huge. Will, it went like this, and there's a running fucking joke. Like, oh my God. Okay. All right. For anyone who's listening that doesn't realize, my brother-in-law is Nick Kyrgios, right? So he is a mad fucking basketball freak, mad enthusiast, right? I came back from my 2015 pro debut And I had, which I now know, obviously with the level of knowledge I now have around, nutrition and everything else, I believe I actually had a element of really low bone mineral density at the time, which probably exacerbated this, precursor to having this break. So I think that I had a whole bunch of weakness there from overtraining, chronic dieting, years of just, dialing in for stages, stuff that I just wasn't as aware of or gave enough respect to at the time. And I came home from this show, and anyway, Nick and the boys all got together, and Christos, and I'm always like, it's always like spot the estrogen amongst the sausage fest when it comes to me hanging out with the boys in Canberra. It's just me and all the lads. So they're all like, come and play ball. And I'm going, boys, no, like, I just want to go lift, bro, like this. And Christos and Nick, like, come play ball. And I went, nah, we went to this high school where they've got this big, conservatorium where they play, and they've got this mad gym. It's a great facility. So I went, nah, you boys go do your thing. I'm going to go in here and lift. And so I did. I took a friend of mine with me. So she was across the other side. I'd warmed up, prepped. But if you can, appreciate that what I just talked about, I think I already had probably, chronic, I was still in a recovery phase post my show. So I wasn't really in a solid position to start going for strength. And I hadn't yet, but I was just starting to progress into it. And I felt good. Everything felt right. And the running joke forever will be, I should have fucking played ball, bastards. And this is what they did to me. So I'm in the gym. I go in, I do all my triggering, do my releasing, do my warm up. Everything looks good, feels good. I've got good form. It's not that was the issue, but I have hyperflexibility, and I'd already had 2 little stress fractures in my back from years ago when I did dance. It's what took me out of ballet and put me into this whole side of things in the first place. I was rehabbing that. So I had a couple little precursors, right? Anyway, got in there, obviously, I think week post the multiple prep on prep, and was in my warm-up. I only had 60 kilos on my back, but it was in a fucking squat. And as I'm coming down, I had my adductor on my right leg go tight, and in the bottom of the squat, one hip rotated that way, piriformis locked on to try to protect the back this way, and it basically went like that in the bottom of the squat. And I had that little hairline stress fracture, and it just went, and you could hear it from across the gym. I heard it in my ears over my music in my headphones. And in that moment, it was just that moment, it took my breath away. And I'm on the ground on my ass, barbells on the floor. She's called out, "Are you okay?" And I just couldn't even speak at first. And then I'm like, nope, I really fucking think I'm not. Quite calmly. And the next minute, started leaking like the Titanic again, because the pain kicked in and it was horrendous. So she picks me up and carries me out to the ball where the boys are playing. And the first thing Christos says, a little shit, I'll never forget, he just looks at me and goes, "See, lady, fucking told you should have played ball." I'm like, oh my God, not now, Satan, not today. Because he always cracks jokes and I love him for it. But oh my God, that was that moment where I'm like, no, really, not today. And then literally the next few months of my life was just legs up in traction, in braces, like multiple injections. They said I'd need surgery, and I'm a stubborn bitch. I'm like, no fucking way. You're not cutting anything on this body. I will do this myself. And then started the journey of what was a good solid 12 months to be able to even start to think about loading anything.
You were like
you coming back to a stage.
You were in like a full like body brace thing though,
body
right?
Brace.
You were still trying to train.
Clients.
Yeah.
I was training. So picture this, Stu. Picture this. This is when we opened our facility up here, bro. And I'm in a full brace, and I'm literally every hour on the hour down, brace off, doing all of the rehab exercise I had to do, right? But I'm literally then within 3 months, I had clients that I was prepping for shows on the floor with me training. And I'm like, you just got to put your weights on and off, man. I can't do it for you right now, clearly. And I'm rolling around managing 20 staff, an entire facility, working 70-hour weeks, full brace on. Like, that was just what I did. I mean, what do? I had the accident 6 weeks before we opened the doors. So yeah, well, I didn't have a choice.
You said that
made it work.
You said that you were, at the time, you obviously already had a fair understanding of nutrition and stuff like that. But you said that you felt as though your bone mineral density might have been down.
100%.
There was a few things that weren't quite right, like nutrition wise, and I guess supplement wise as well. What were you doing at that time? And how has that changed in the years since?
You know what? I probably wasn't doing, anywhere near as consistent application of what I do now. Like now I'm really consistent. So there is just no on season, off season with me. There is just literally a default plan, a base plan, and then it will vary as to what goes above and beyond the basics that are non-negotiables, depending upon what I'm in, right? So for everyone listening, I've gone from being that horrific story to now powerlifting my very first novice comp, which I was winning all the way through till the last fucking lift, and I came third, and I was so dirty by 1 point because I missed a call. Oh my God, total novice. I loved being an amateur at something again, by the way. It was really cool actually coming from the bottom to the top, and I intend to be at the top, my friend. I will come back and take that first place. I don't know how to lose graciously. No, I am gracious. I just want to come back and win.
I like that point there, and your mate BPAC's actually got a fair point where you don't know when you don't notice that you've got the chinks in your armor per se, but eventually something will break, and it will notify you very quickly, and whether that be physically in your particular case, whether that be spiritually or what have you, the different levels to it, you will get the universe has a funny way of giving you a rude slap when you when you haven't done your diligence per se, or if you've just gone and run very, very hard at life for a long period of time without the due. And I guess that's where I'll put a lot of focus in recent years is in the stress management space, and that's where that I'd imagine your friendship with BPAC probably flows on beautifully with that, and that it's sort of the balancing of those two spheres is pretty important. Hey, like you seem like a very high achieving person. You've got to have your downers and your uppers to balance that.
Yeah, super important. And like when you talk about the product side of things, right? So just even the fact that I hit really heavy high doses and what is actually just sufficient for me, because I don't think I was getting enough of it, but zinc and magnesium, I hit that at night. I have my melatonin, I have my zinc magnesium, or I'll either hit an oxyram or an adrenal switch and then go to bed. My sleep cycle, my sleep hygiene has been a major focus for me since my back. Getting the really good full 4 structures of sleep cycles with a restorative deep sleep, imperative to me. I'd never done that. So to give you insight, when I say cyclone, I'm not fucking kidding. Like I would walk into a room, blow shit up, walk out, and I was on track, but everyone else was left dealing with my mess. Because I would not even sleep. Like there'd be 1 to 2 days a week on average where I just would not sleep at all, because I just work all the way through the night. Like I just couldn't help it. That's how my brain was wired. Too many tabs open all the time, right? So the back break put me on my ass, but it allowed everything to slow down and, I guess software install update from a DOS system to an actual like proper current strategy. And essentially it allowed me to focus on those things. So I went quite deep into this space of, okay, what am I doing that's giving back to my central nervous system? I started focus on putting a lot of parasympathetic nervous system inputs into my day. So I'd awake every day around the same time with a set sort of structure that gave me better sleep hygiene, which let me sleep. The minute I started catching up on sleep, my whole life changed for the better. And I didn't even know that I was missing out on these things, right? I mean, I sleep when you're dead. That was my strategy for a long time. But now I'm like, man, if I don't sleep, I'm dead. So, you learn these things. And I also started to learn that, it was totally okay to make myself a priority, because I'm very much that person who will put everyone else's needs before my own. And it's just natural nature for me. I still do those things, but I focus actually on setting myself up for success first. So my day starts now with a really solid level of habits and rituals, and ends with the same token too. And one of the biggest things, I guess that I focused on too, was no longer denying or ignoring perhaps unresolved emotional patterns, which for me, it's just because I was always a tough nut and I was always 100 miles an hour, that I guess I would just let things sort of sit or just not necessarily acknowledge them. Whereas now I'm quite good at going, nah, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. And setting up boundaries and or just acknowledging how I'm feeling about a situation and releasing it, right? Not letting it sit inside of me. Because I think, and this is what I talked about heavily with BPAC on our podcast that we did for his muscle intelligence, was the fact that I did a whole bunch of work on psychosomatic healing. So there was all this shit that had been sitting there, but I didn't even know was sitting subconsciously heavy on me, that I processed while I had my back break. And it took about 3 years post the break for me to go through it fully. But it sounds corny, but the minute that I did that work, and then instilled a lot of structural pattern movement improvement work that I did with Dr. Jordan Shallow and BPAC. Chronic pain went. My whole chronic pain went. And this is, I shit you not, Stu will know this. I couldn't bend over and put my shoes on. Christos used to have to dress me for the first 3 years post my back break. Like, it was bad. And let me put context into this. While this was happening, I was winning world championships. So anyone that has an excuse as to why they can't get to a stage, I'd like to hear it and why it's good enough to
It's
stop
like
you, because I got on stage.
back.
Exactly. Like, okay, Will, you've not heard it, but when I started to train again, I couldn't squat or deadlift for the first 2 world championships I won. I did not squat or deadlift at all. I used blood flow restriction training and literally 25% maximal loading for the first 12 weeks that got me to my first USA title. Then I built upon that and we started loading a little bit more, but it was all machine based, no free weight, because I just didn't quite have the structural strength. And then came on to win my second US title 6 months later. Then went away and started more progressive rehabilitation focused work, but still dealing with chronic pain, unable to put my shoes on to pose until only a couple of weeks out. Won my first world championships in the UK. Then before my second world championship win in Vegas, Will, I had 3 epidural cortisone injections into my back. The last one 2 days before I flew out to win my show, which I did not put heels on until midnight the night before, where I put my whole routine on stage together in my room while I sucked down CBD oil to stop the pain.
Look at Will's face.
My life.
I mean, look at Will's face right now while you're explaining this. Like, I think Will's just like, holy crap, what's going on with this woman? Who am I talking to?
I'm interviewing the Terminator. No, look at that.
That's actually what it looked like, right? So it's only been in the last, like, my 2019 win was my most normal win that I've had, and this year would be, if we're getting on stage, which I'm still aiming for, but God forbid, we don't know whether it'll be a real stage or a virtual one, but fuck it, I'm going to look fantastic anyway, regardless. It's going to be my most normal year, and I've still had an epidural shot this year too. So
there's about 6 different key points there. One from a athletic perspective, and the other one from the personal. And you answered it quite beautifully there. But I think as someone who's run 1,000,000 miles an hour, very, very fast going, very very peppy, energetic, very extroverted. When you said you have to really take care now of the parasympathetic inputs into your day to balance that. Because like Nick Jones put this in our previous episode really eloquently when he said the issue wasn't so much the mental strength. He said my mind would kill my body in terms of, the amount of work he'll do. And it's so true for the A-type personalities that like to really have a go at life. We will genuinely dig ourselves a very deep hole quite happily, bury what we need to keep going until something breaks, which in your case happens. But one thing that is really, really, I guess, striking on the athletic side, then flipping that, is with the creating that stability. You mentioned more machines than free weights and so on. How did you go about, out of curiosity? Because imagine this would have a lot of parallels to your powerlifting training that's been used to getting back to it. Going from a place of complete zero, like lumbar thoracic stability, right back into having to rebuild all pelvic stability, lumbar, like everything would have to be rebuilt. So, what were some of the key fundamentals? And if there was someone starting to prevent this happening, what would you say? A few of the key things you go to the average gym rat to stop a back break, I suppose.
Prevention first. I think prevention first. Let's go prevention first. Do not lift with ego. Number one. So if you can't stand with stability on one leg, you have no right squatting on 2. Break it back, go single leg movements always, and really perfect the pelvic stability and your oblique sling. So for me, when we take when we talk about that preventative focus, I use that then as a rehabilitative focus. And our whole focus for Dr. Jordan Shallow and I was to develop that. You should have seen how horrific my fucking windmills were. And I could not hip airplane to save my soul. Now I'm an absolute boss at it. Now those 2 motions alone were completely imperative actually to creating the range of motion I needed and the thoracic mobility, but also to create the pelvic stability for the hips to actually have proper range of motion, because they were all really big limiting factors for me in my injury. But if I was honest with you, I believe that systemically before the injury, there were a lot of cues that now I can recognize, and I think in hindsight, that was showing me I needed to work on these things previously, but I just didn't tune in. I didn't listen to them. I was so busy and going all the time. I didn't tap into my body. So I would say 2 things on the preventative side. make sure that you are very capable at the single leg and the isometric based movements and the isolated movements first before you go trying to do heavy lifts above and beyond that bilaterally, because bilateral movements can hide imbalances. So, make sure test your weakest links first, right? Then really build on a structured, strong setup and focus on your core. You must be fully engaging your pelvic floor and your TVA, and you must have a very solid brace before you try loading anything strength-wise. You have no right to load until you are structurally sound to do so. So I leave my ego at the door. I have no ego whatsoever anymore. I am not the person that I used to be anymore at all. And I auto-regulate like a boss with no guilt. I don't walk into a gym thinking I've got to max out on my last week's session, and then I walk in and I might feel a twinge. And then I'll auto-regulate it and know, okay, well, today's just not going to be a power day. It's going to be this day instead. I can walk out still feeling accomplished and great about that session. I don't get hung up on, oh, well, I didn't improve that strength this week, so I failed, or I'm a loser, or I feel fat because of that, because this is the dumb shit that goes through, in particular, women's heads. I don't do any of that. But that's because I've been taught, I guess, the profound blessings that come from being an able-bodied person versus the disabled. And I think also, or an element of disability anyway. And I think also I've learned to really respect that if the body's feeling off, don't push it, because you will bust something and you'll be on your ass. So my number one thing would be about creating that stability and strength, going core through everything else. Think about yourself like you're trying to build a high rise. Seriously build the strongest, deepest, most profound, physical foundation you can before you start trying to lay your levels. Otherwise, you're going to get blown over with the first sign of a light breeze, let alone a fucking cyclone, right? So I think build those foundations first. And then I think if you want to, progress anything, don't feel, inclined to be unable to auto-regulate. And for the love of God, deload. Your body needs rest and recovery. Stop trying to think that more is more. It's not. In fact, I've found less is more. If you have a good, well-structured, strategic approach to lifting with really well-structured days off, really good fuel, really good recovery, you're going to elicit far greater results, and you won't be busting your nut to do it. So, for me, moving into powerlifting gave me my first ever 3-day off a week structure. And I nearly blew my brains out the first couple of weeks. So I'm like, what do I do with these extra 2 days of my life? Actually, it was an extra 1 day. I'd already moved to 2 days rest. But now I love it. And when I go back into bodybuilding, I'm going, oh my God, what is this only 1 day or 2 days off situation? And why is there a number past 5? Why am I counting above a 5-rep count? I'm having a hard time getting past 3. And what do you mean I can't have a packet of Tim Tams in between my rest, between lifting, because I've got to go within 60 seconds? It's a totally different structure.
Something that I'd love to, you're talking a lot about rest and recovery there, and rewinding back to what you said a little bit earlier about sleep, and you're really focused on your different phases of sleep now. Sleep is something that me and Will are really, really big advocates of, and, understanding, the different sleep phases, and also using supplements to, I guess, help that if you need a little bit of kickstart to get those rhythms working properly. You mentioned that you use adrenal switch, sometimes before go to bed. Is that sort of something that you use to kind of be able to do that? And do you track those cycles, or what would you give to someone about sleep?
Oring. You lucky girl.
So I'm a geek, right? I measure my heart rate variability. I look at, so when I talk about, this putting me on my ass and actually tapping into it, I'm legitimate. I track absolutely everything now. So I don't let it guide me. So I don't wake up and look at my readiness score and go, oh my God, it says that I'm below 80. So I'm going to go and get underneath my doona and just hide for the day. I don't do that shit. I will literally wake up and be like, how am I feeling energetically, physically? Then I'll look at this, because I allow me to dictate first what I'm feeling rather than the ring.
That's really,
I think it's important.
That's a really good point. Because I did similar. I started tracking it recently because I've always been massive on getting your 20 to 25% REM sleep, looking at your deep cycles and so on, and transitions, cortisol prior to bedtime, melatonin, blue light, everything. But it's really funny when you said that, because when you first start tracking, because I purposely didn't go out and buy a tracker, because I know myself, and I know I just run myself an experiment. I thought the second I buy a tracker, I'm going to make my life into that's the full 24 hours being tracked, right? But I did it anyway against my my partner got it anyhow. And the first thing I did was that when you wake up and you go, oh, I feel awesome. Then you look at your tracker and you go, oh, I actually had.
And you're like, oh my God, am I terrible?
Yeah, you got to rubbish. He goes, oh, that sleep quality was rubbish. Like, oh no, my day is bad.
Yeah.
So you've got to mix the both.
It's very easy to do it, right? So instead, what I do is, like I said, I'll gauge what I'm feeling energetically, gauge my movement pattern, whatever. And then I'll look at this. And more so what I look at it from is, okay, the interest for me is like, what's my, like, this is me really geeking out. Where my energy system sat the day before? Have I tapped into a different system? Has that then had an impact? Have I had enough time between my last session to my sleep? Did I eat too close to bed? Has that affected so I go through all of these different, like I'm analyzing it critically, but I'm not necessarily analyzing it, mentally and I'm not emotionally attached to it, if that makes sense.
I think I can kind of look at it. Clone. this is amazing.
Right?
So what? Except there's a difference in following is the main thing there, Will.
there is a smidgen. There is. But I find that phenomenal. I think sleep is something that a lot of our listeners get a lot of value from, because a lot of our listeners are very much A-type personalities. They're store owners, they're business owners, they're people who like to really push the envelope. And I like to think. I used to do a lot of seminars on particularly the parasympathetic drives and really look at cortisol management. And my initial approach used to be years ago, just stress less, people. Like, here, let's look at our lifestyle. Let's try and minimize stresses. I realize that's
people go, but how?
Yeah,
right?
but how? And I'll go, all right, let's not just say stress less, because that doesn't work. Let's go run as hard as you want at life, but let's give you the tools on the other side to drop it, right? To help, drop the hammer when you need to on the parasympathetic. So with yours, you notice you've started tracking, and that's quite a phenomenal tool you're ordering. So how have you gone with, what are some of the things you've noticed have made a massive difference? Like HRV is another great metric, but for sleep, what's your big things?
So I talked about it before when I said, when you're in the gym, how to work around and prevent injury, auto-regulation. So my number one thing is this: if I legitimately, and this isn't just going off this data, I don't, like I said, I don't let this guide me. This might actually, because I like to be an overperformer, I like to hit like 85 plus on my readiness score. Otherwise I'm like, oh man, fuck, I'm failing. So I will then do like meditation.
Alicia, you're the kid in school when they come. Remember when you were in school and they came in and did the eye test? Yep. And you're the kid who's like really squinting to try and see extra to the other kid. Like, I want him to say that I've got superhuman sight.
I've got 40/20. Pretty much.
Yeah. So what do you do? What are the other factors?
I will take a rest day. So I might go, screw it. Today, today's meant to be a rest day, or today's meant to be whatever day it is, and I'm meant to rest like over the weekend, maybe 2 consecutive days. I might break it up and go, right, today I'm going to rest and I'll come back to this tomorrow. Or I might meditate, or I might actually go, fuck it, it's time for a bookend. And what I call a bookend is a weekend where I will recharge. I earth, and I basically earth out. And BPAC will talk about this. It's where I'll just go and get up in the mountains. I'll take myself and Christos out, and we'll literally get a cabin and just literally go hike. And it's being active still, but it's in a different context. And it's in a situation where I feel like I energetically recharge, right? So it's just more about doing the things that fuel your feel good, top that cup back up, right? So not taking from you, but giving back. So I'll tap into more of that. I always use my blue lights. I put my blue light screen on my phone. So my phone is tapped into a circadian rhythm, and it actually dims the minute the sun goes down, wakes back up the minute that the minute that the light comes up. So wherever I am all over the planet, it does that. I have my blue lights everywhere I go. I wear them to the cinema like we did last night. Like I'm legit a freak with it. But the other thing that I've done, which I believe COVID has been another fucking blessing for me in a lot of ways. It just, reconfirmed and then brought me back into alignment in some of these habits and rituals that I think I had started to lose a little bit of traction on, and brought me back into the space of doing them more diligently. And now they're just part of me again. But I've actually instilled I completely shut down off of work by no later than 6. I don't watch a lot of television at all. And then I go to bed and I read a classic. I've got this I'm trying to get through as many classics as I can in 2020. And I'm fucking working my way through them, bro, like a boss. But I'll read a little bit at night and it puts me to sleep. Like it really does. And it just, it helps my brain categorize the day in a very productive way that allows me to sleep deeper. Because a lot of the times what keeps us awake not only can be vitamin mineral deficiencies and chemicals not being released in the pattern that helps the circadian flow, but it can also be the inability for the brain to actually start to deload itself, or, you know, back itself up to the cloud, if you know what I mean. So if you allow your brain that opportunity to defry and back itself up, which for me, when I'm reading, gives me that context to do it, and it's not overstimulation, it's just the right level, and it just really does help me nod off. It's just been a beautiful addition to my sleep hygiene and my nighttime ritual. So, you know, you'll catch me at a nighttime, I'm doing my, you know, pre-bed situation about an hour out. I'm having my melatonin, I'm dropping my, you know, oxyram, and I'm having my zinc, my magnesium, adrenal switch perhaps. And then right before bed though, I have my 0.6 grams per kilogram, my bolus of, and now he brings me my food. What a champion. Fuck, I'm marrying well, boys. This is the secret to my success behind me.
See, you know, it's so funny though, like, just before we get back to the sleep stuff, you talk about being the one piece of estrogen among sausages, but you strike me, Alicia, as a very tomboyish,
100%.
almost,
100%.
there's a certain masculinity to your personality type anyway, but to look at, you would not pick that, right? If you go through your Ali's Instagram, there is nothing masculine. There is nothing masculine about it. You're like, oh man, this girl would be a lot of work, you know.
No, I'm so low maintenance. So low maintenance. And you know, look, I'm a complete professional, but I don't put a ceiling on myself. You know, I sit on this and I cuss. I'm not going to not swear. That's just not better. That's not being authentic, right? I'm not that girl. I'm also not a bubblegum girl. So I'm not going to get out there and be all, you know, fake everything for you. Sorry, boys. Sorry for all the viewers. I'm going to be myself. And I actually think that that's actually, for me personally, I think that's what's made my success so good though, because people can trust me. I like, what you see is what you get. When you meet me, I'm probably better than what you thought I was going to be. Hopefully, fingers crossed. If you're not, fucking sorry in advance.
Ali, I thought you were going to have the wings on for the podcast.
Yeah, I'm devastated.
I'm just gonna superimpose them. And I swear to God that they're there. They're just invisible, mate. I have a halo too. And you know, look, I think you're right. Like, you know, I'm not that kind of girl. Like, I'm 100%. I'm the queen of this show, but I'm not necessarily the most high maintenance diva you'll come across. Absolutely not. I'm more about the journey, you know, and I'm performance orientated. So I love performing. I love getting in. I love lifting heavy. I love getting results. I love changing physiques. I love changing the space of, I love overcoming the limitations that most people would not get out of bed for every day as part of my challenge. Like, I love that. That's what makes me.
I can tell that you really are driven to help people as well. Like, I mean, I remember
100%.
when I first met you at that at a training week that we had, you know, I was bringing my prepped meals, and I don't think there was really many other people in the room that were kind of into that at the time. And you know, I remember you coming up to me in our first break and you know, introducing yourself and sort of offering me to join up with your you know, prep programs and that sort of thing. And, you know, just because you noticed that I was interested in it and that I was kind of doing that, you know, so it's definitely something that I've noticed with you, is that you do seem to really have this outward focus on being driven to help other people. Is that, do you think that that's got a lot to do with your success and the following that you've managed to build?
100%. You know, look, okay, so let's bring it back to early days, back before WBFF even came to Australia. This is what I would be known for. I was that person where if I was backstage with my team, you know what it's like. You go to a natural bodybuilding show in Australia and they can be the nastiest, cattiest freaking shit shows ever. Like, their backstages are horrible. And, you know, everyone's just greasing you up and down, and all the coaches are in the corner, like, you know, basically trying to psych out other teams. Like, it's crazy. I don't operate that way. So I would stand, and I was known for this. And this is how, and I did not do this to try to get a client. I did it because I hate the concept of someone having a bad experience at a sport I love. And I think it gets given a bad rep because people will go in and have those shit show situations and they walk away feeling like it's like being in a schoolyard being bullied. It's fucking horrible. And I hate it. I hate bullies too. That's another thing. I cannot stand online trolls and bullies. So for me, I would walk in those environments and I would be this person where And I know it sounds bad, but I'd have a girl, and this actually happened. So this is a real story. I had a girl that was going to win the bigger, division. And then this other girl walked in out of nowhere, and she's completely by herself. And I could tell that it was her first show, first time. Like, she's completely by herself. I had a team of 20. I always had the largest teams backstage. And we've got a really, tight crew, and everyone's having fun and vibing. And this poor girl's by herself, and a coach hasn't turned up. And my heart just went out for her because she had no tan. And but this is the scary part. I'm looking at him and going, this bitch can win this show. And she's not on my team. And my girl is going to win if I don't help this girl. But you know what I did? Walked over, put my gloves on, come with me, darling. I need to dream tan you. And here I am backstage with a girl that's not my girl. I'm dream tanning her. She didn't know what to eat, didn't know what to do. So I'm pumping her up. I'm telling her what to eat. And this shows you how good my team is. My girl that would have won the show didn't even raise an eyebrow, was not even upset, and welcomed this girl in. And they were doing push-ups on the floor together. They walk out, they got first, second. My girl got second. So needless to say, you're right. Yes, that is who I am. That is how I am. And if anyone has anything else to say about it, they clearly haven't fucking met me yet.
Oh God. Yeah. So definitely, it's definitely the image that you give off, and anyone who's met you in person will definitely say that. But in saying that, being that you're someone who's very down to earth and very real, there's also this kind of holistic sort of spiritual side about you that you speak a lot about, and that's very interesting to me because I'm a very holistic person as well, which sometimes people feel like I'm a lover of science. I'm a science guy, and people feel like science and kind of this holistic spiritual
don't connect.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm totally opposite to that. I believe that they must connect, and that really the connection is huge. Like, you talked a lot with BPAC about this psychosomatic I guess control that you can have over systems of your body, and you talked about chronic pain and stuff like that, and this all comes into sleep and all that sort of thing. Talk to us a little bit about your I guess ethos and your the way that you look at the power of the mind.
Oh my God, it is everything. I mean, look, I guess I'm a prime example of that. I could have just gone, yeah, okay, that's it. My career's over. I will never be able to do these things again. I'm going to have surgery. And I went, no, blow that. I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to have that happen to me. And that wasn't the first time in my life that had happened. I've got a couple of medical conditions that were diagnosed when I was younger with it. I was told the same sort of shit. And I'm just living proof that, nutritionally intervene, set up the right infrastructure, have the right mindset, and you'll overcome everything. And I have. So yes, I think the mindset is everything. I mean, and you even said it before, one of you guys did, about, the mind will basically blow the body out because the mind will do shit that the body will never be able to perform with. And it's very true. So if that's the case, then isn't there a lot to be said for the fact that mind can heal the body, that the mind can take you places and encourage the body to take itself further, as long as you have the right mindset to it? Because I think you can. And I think that being emotionally aware, and I think being aware of your surroundings and your energy and your impact on others, enables you to actually make and facilitate serious change, not only within yourself, but your environment, your outcome, and other people. So yes, science underpins everything I do, but I believe, though, that science and test tubes and laboratory outcomes are not the only thing. That we're not a fucking robot, like, we are built with a lot more stuff than just that. And I think that understanding mechanisms for decision making, limiting beliefs, pain thresholds, response to pain, and pain can come in many cases. It's not always going to be physical. It can be, for a lot of people, mental health is a really, really big issue these days. And there are things you can do nutritionally, and there are things you can do and then there are things that need to be done spiritually, I think, to overcome those situations. So 100% I do. I think we can do anything we fucking want to do whenever we want to do it, as long as we believe it can be done and we just don't give up. That's what I truly believe. So, I'm never going to let someone give up on themselves. If they're working with me, then they're going to work through a lot of hard shit, but I'll never give up on them as long as they don't give up on themselves.
I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You've got someone who's got a thorough understanding from the both, sort of, I guess, the biohacking angle, as well as the, someone who's been physically broken and physically phenomenal in both ends of the spectrum. I'm very intrigued to hear your opinion towards, I guess, what comes first? I've got a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario in my head between the mindset versus the so people like we've had on mindset coaches some before and life coaches, and I guess the interesting part that I find was always I always like to ask them, what do you think is mindset creates the biochemical environment for success, or does the environment, like the biochem, limit that? So for example, if you're swimming around in a bath of cortisol, you've got serotonin and dopamine issues and so on, can you possibly have that productive mindset regardless of how positive you want to be after watching that motivational video? I'm super intrigued by that, but then there are other people who literally go, yes, but the positive mindset will have a direct influence on the actual chemistry. So I find you've had both angles, and you're very self-tuned.
Yeah.
So what's you like? Do you just override personally? Because
I think there are days when you override. Yeah, 100%. I think there are days where it comes easy and days where you got to work at it. And it's not something that it's just, you turn on and switch it on. You've got to consciously make the choice to think that way, 100%. And I think that it's a duality. I think that you got to have both concurrent. I think you've got to move to have the endorphins to create the things you want that release the stuff up top, but you've got to have the stuff up top to make you move on the days where motivation wanes. So I think you can't have one without the other. I think almost it's a fucking combustion of chicken and egg at the same time.
Like a yin and yang,
really
yin and yang
do.
situation.
Well, it is. And I believe in this. Like, I'm really big about the dark and the light. We all have both. It's which one we sit inside of today. And we can choose to have both. I mean, the sun sets for a reason, right? So there is not a point in denying components or elements to ourselves, but it's understanding that there is a fluidity of their existence and their coexistence. So you can't have one without the other. And it's okay to have a bad day mentally, but still get up and do what you got to do to tick the boxes physically, because the next day, as a result of that endorphin release, the mental will probably shift. But the motivation wanes. The mental is not something that's a given or a binary situation. It's something you've got to consistently work at. It's a muscle like everything else.
I find that that's really interesting, actually. You're right. There are days where you just have to physically override it. Out of curiosity, like it might be a bit personal, but when you went from the place where you, because I think a lot of us in this space are very much juggernauts in the sense that it's keep moving until you're stopped. When you said you stopped and unpacked a lot of stuff though, because I think that is the tendency for a lot of people who are in this sort of space, where particularly fitness, where we all tend to put a lot on our plates, and that's physically and, whether it be business as well as like a comp prep, as we all know, is just a morbid scenario. So when you actually, what was your experience when you actually sat down and unpacked that? Was that to your detriment per se initially, or was that something that you felt needed? Like, did that just unbuckle everything, or? It
needed to happen. And, okay. So what usually happens in that situation too, and especially when it's linked to chronic pain, is you actually exacerbate the pain. So you actually start feeling more of the pain body. So it's actually emotional body and pain body that comes in to connect. But before you actually release and let go, it heightens. And the hardest part for you, I think, mentally, is you got to keep pushing through that. And that's it. So when you talk about, does it disrupt and blow shit up? Kind of, in a sense, but also no. Like, it also feels like the pieces are coming together, if that makes sense. And it was an incredible weight that gets lifted once you actually start processing through it and going, what it is it's a journey of forgiveness, I believe. And it's a journey of self-compassion. And that's what it was for me, learning that, hey, what, every mistake you've ever made has led you to today, and you're pretty fucking epic. So you're okay. Not hanging on to the things you felt you could have done better, should have done better, should be more, could be more, like letting go of all of that stuff. It's that white noise that for a lot of people holds them back. And once you do that and you become completely liberated from all the expectations of what ifs and should be's, and instead you just are, there's a profound lightness to it, and you no longer have to force piece of jigsaw. It just comes together. Did
that change your performance though? And you're like, because I believe that when you say you remove the expectations, you straight away, really those are almost unrealistic self-expectations are often the ones that actually drive us to excel. Like if you didn't have an expectation on yourself, if you were satisfied from the beginning, I think a lot of us wouldn't have gotten to where we are. I think, so when you actually reconciled those, and did you lose some of that drive?
No, it got better in a different direction. But I agree with you. I think that the best of us don't come from sweet spots. We come from adversity and challenge, right? I think we come from having to tame a wolf and feed a wolf at the same time. And I still do it. I have a wolf in my heart that gets fed daily. It's just in a different way. And it's no longer something that controls me, but I have a more of a directional focus and pull with it. So I channel it into different spaces. So it's still there, very much there, but it's in a different way. And it's in a much more forgiving way, if that makes sense. So instead of driving away from something to something, instead of driving away from something, I'm moving towards something. It's a kind of a different focus. If I could give you from my personal experience, that'd be the way I'd probably describe it. Like, I no longer have points to prove. I just have stuff to win for myself. It's different. It's a different space.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that's really interesting because we've spoken about this before. I think it was actually Nick Jones before and a few other guys where the sources of the drive, I suppose. A lot of the time it does come from, like, Nick had a like he was had a childhood was going to be kicked out of school and so on, dropped out early, and he had a lot of anger management issues as a kid, and he was really big on the spiritual side. And he was saying Frank Zane was the person he used as a reference for being one of the first people big on meditation, but way back in the golden era. And you touched on it as well. And it seems to be a common theme that a lot of successful people seem to have as part of their daily ritual. But I'd love to hear that part of your personal experience with it, because it is something that's different for everyone, and it can be, but it's something that it's piqued my curiosity, because a lot of people that I admire have got it as part of their inputs.
I do it a lot. I've done it for a while, but I do it more consistently during pain threshold periods, and during periods where I go, this is no longer eustress. When I have a feeling like this is actually, I might be stressed, because I don't always pick up on it. When you're an A-top, you don't. You're used to doing shit that no one else can handle, so it just is normal for you, right? But now I can pick up on, because of HRV, when something might not necessarily be eustress. So I'll tap into it more. Now, I do things like when I wake up, there's a couple of little processes I go through where I'll actually visualize my day. And so a meditative process of transcendence where I'll visualize the outcomes I want for the day and the energetic vibe for the day. And then I step into it. So mine's a little bit different, but I did 2 years, this is digressing heaps, but I did 2 years of work with a Tibetan Buddhist monk. So I did a whole spiritual journey. And so I do this stuff from work that I did with him. But then at night, though, I do hypnosis-based meditation. So I actually go through this process of, it's actually a thing that I'll listen to, and it has ways where it drops sound in at different times. It takes you through a hypnosis. So I read my book, then listen to that. And I literally will wake up with my AirPods in the bed, not knowing anything, but knowing I've been dreaming. So it's
not knowing where you are and thinking that you're a fetus floating in fluid. Where am I?
Pretty much. I also do meditative expressive writing. So anyone that follows me will notice from time to time I'll drop little bits into my story, and they'll just be things that will come like. So I'm a literary. I did that when I was a lot younger. I got published when I was only 15 and 16, and then let go of it. And I've only just found it again in the last couple of years, probably more so the last year of my life. And actually something that BPAC really encouraged me to get back into. So I did. And from time to time I'll share some stuff, but I do a lot of writing. Like I literally, no matter where I am, and that's quite a meditative process for me. And it'll be reflective stuff that it's not always about my journey. I'll write something that'll sound pretty deep about, and people will be like, they'll automatically be like, what's going on in your life? I'm like, fuck man, settle down. It's not about me. My girlfriend's going through something, and I've written something from the space of our conversation. But it's quite powerful to be able to, like I said before, download your software to the cloud by doing stuff like that, where you're actually releasing thoughts, feelings, expressions that can't get bottled up and show up as a physical thing later, because that's where a lot of people come undone. So meditation is about that. It's about basically linking, unconscious with conscious. It's about categorizing and sorting through, I guess, everything that's coming at you throughout the course of the day. And it's something that does put you in quite a relaxed state, and you get your theta waves, and it basically takes your brain through different cycles, and it has a whole bunch of great benefits to you. But for me, what I find that's quite profound is it literally just takes away the noise and puts you in a place where you don't, like I said, it's that weightlessness that comes from not having stuff that's weighing on you. And sometimes, that's what happens if we just have too much going on that we don't really have a way to release or get out. So, that's what I find it is like for me.
I think I just heard an unintentional link there where you said you've sort of been really quite big on this in the last few, you've just revisited your, the sort of authorship, I suppose you'd say. And I think the creative space is often not linked with this, like just because of the parts of the brain you utilize when running at a high, sympathetic pace, you don't often utilize the parts of your brain that would be more prone to creativity. And I think it's really interesting when you said you've put a bigger focus on mindfulness and meditation and so on, and then out of nowhere comes the return of a rather creative pursuit, i.e. writing. I think because that's something that I've always struggled with personally is when you're really just charging at life, it's very, very difficult. The creativity side wanes. And then I believe it was Ben Bickman, I think it was, he's got a really cool doctorate in this sort of space. He was saying the really one of the really nice perks of meditation is the promotion of neuroplasticity and how that can be phenomenal for bringing back restorative in that learning, because you do spend a lot of time, unfortunately, in your in the sort of amygdala more so than the cerebral cortex with it, living a lifestyle that's very high paced and go. Awesome for success, very, very much so. But yeah, that's probably
you don't stop. You don't slow down though when you live there. And what you find is you burn out, right? So that's where we start having a whole bunch of issues that happen to us physiologically, but then also mentally. So I find creativity and play is something that we lose. We lose sight of that when we grow up and gain responsibility, right? And so I think, quite often that's when we start to lose our ability to actually just communicate our basic wants, needs, and feelings. So for me, this is where that, like I said, that gives me that release and that connectivity to just, quite a primal situation of what's going on for me. And, I strongly recommend it with a lot of my athletes that go through phases where they can't reconcile a behavior that's going on for them with what they want, and they might not align. And I'm like, well, get back down to the crux of what your primal actual feelings are and expressively write. Because quite often the things that will come down where you think no one's ever going to read it are the truest forms of yourself. And they're the things that will start to give you some indicators as to, okay, all right, well, fuck, maybe this is going on. And I didn't know that is a precursor to this. And, that's where change can happen, right? So yes, when you get back to your earlier question about mindset is everything, but mindset is only going to happen if you actually let it tap into the bigger core of, what's driving you too. So the spiritual, mental, and physical stuff, it's all together. This journey, it's not, you can't compartmentalize it. You can't just go be a robot in the gym, and you can't just go and, not declutter the brain and expect everything to work optimally, because it's not going to. It'll give you a kick in the ass at some point. So, I think holistic focus has got to be practiced more frequently than it actually is.
There's a lot
and I think it's the key to all success.
So much value.
I'd love to, obviously we've gone through a lot of this mindset stuff, sleep stuff, the injury, but the thing is, I'd love to talk a little bit about your hugely successful business, Ali's Angels and Alphas, and sort of, I'd love you to give people an idea of the scope of that, because I don't think some people actually realize how big that is. And then, I'd love to talk a little bit, I know we don't have a huge amount of your time, but I'd love to talk a little bit about the process of what you do and what you recommend, especially with the supplement side of things as well.
Yeah, look, so well, let's go to the subs first. I mean, my when we talk about this default, where it's the basis for my all day, every day, every year situation, I do not go without my essential amino acids and my creatine. They're non-negotiables daily, on season, off season, whatever there is, it's no days off, right? So that's an all year round thing. My zinc, magnesium, and the things that help support my sleep cycle at night. I'll have glutamine as well. And then obviously it's my protein. And I like to rotate my proteins, and I like to have, there's a couple of different things I'll use. And I love my Blessed. I love my EHB Blessed, which is actually a plant-based protein that I use for my cooking. So anyone that hasn't gotten on it, you need to check out some of my cooking, because I make some epic shit with great macros. And I actually have a couple of recipe books that you can find on my webpage, but I'm doing a whole bunch and a whole series of EHP based cooking for elite Supp. So anyone that wants to have a look at that stuff. But before bed, and I was actually touching on this before and we missed it, I will always go to bed with a 0.6 gram per kilogram bolus of protein, serving last thing at night, because I find that it just 100% supports my recovery. It keeps me, anabolic throughout the evening. And I just find, because I train low in the morning, it just carries me through.
And what kind of protein do you use? A slow release protein, or just whatever you're using at the time?
I rotate between, there's a couple of different ones, but I love my IsoPep for post training. I will have my OxyWhey usually in the evenings, but then I do rotate. So I have a couple of other ones that I'll throw in here and there. And like I said, my Blessed is always for cooking. I do like the odd slow release, but it's not like that's it and that's all I'll have. I'm kind of not really attached to anything like that, but I just have my mechanisms for my timings and sort of what I tend to do all year round. So that's sort of the blueprint for the whole year. And then, look far out. I'll just throw in some wasp bars here and there when I want to. If I'm feeling the jam during my off season, look, and it's a convenience thing, right? So sometimes I will utilize the supplement from a convenience point of view. I always prefer to go whole foods first. I'm not going to deny that. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but the whole gastrointestinal situation is my primary focus from a mastication point of view. I prefer to chew my food. So, look, that's me in a nutshell. But when it comes to prepping in my athletes, everyone has a very unique biological situation. So no two people are the same. So therefore, no two protocols are the same. And I will look at each individual respectively. And if I've got a plant-based athlete, they require a completely different approach. And they're usually, more predisposed to have lacking in minerals and inability to have energy availability and a whole bunch of other things that will be considered. I have a large cohort of plant-based athletes, by the way. It's a very trendy thing at the moment. So I manage that well. We've got 50% of our athletes are actually overseas. So across, the USA and Europe. So I have a lot of athletes with different situations, access to different foods, not access to different foods. There's a whole bunch of things that go into managing a team across the globe like this that you've got to be aware of, and that's not even just cultural nuances, because you've got to factor those in too. But that's what I love. I love that. I love working with the diversity and the variety and all of the different nuances. And then, factoring in, like I said, cultural and religious situations, that I've got to program and be aware of and be around. Prepping someone through Ramadan's always interesting, but I do it all the time. The Jewish Passovers, you name it and I'm doing it. But I love it. And what it means is that I have no days off. I work, pretty much all week around, but on my terms, my times, and on the different time zones, because obviously I need to be across all of the different connection points with my athletes. I've got different call structures that people will link into and set on our different time zones in my scheduling system. So I have a very well-oiled machine that is the way this business runs.
Like, a lot of people don't realize this too. Like, obviously it's Ali's, Angels and Alphas, but you have a team that manages this, right? There's no way that how many athletes would you have at any given time?
Between 200 and 400.
Oh.
So that's more than one person can prep at a time, right? So you have a team.
So what it is, and when I say that, it's not overwhelming when you look at it like this though, right? There is across the globe, multiple shows at different dates all the time. So it's not like I have that many people all peaking and prepping at the same time. They rotate around different cycles, and different phases require different levels of input and coaching and, I guess more frequency of assessment and adjustments. So I do all of the nutritional structuring for these clients. I don't actually have I'll get a little bit of support on that, but I'll set the overarching, macro and meso cycles for that process and the periodization for that. But then the programming side, I'll give instruction for the overview on someone if they've got. And then I've got my coaching team of specialists. So say someone comes to me and they've got a specific injury or they've got a specific situation. I have a complete panel of specialists in their fields. So everyone from, Dr. Jordan Shallow through to Xenia, who's, a major rehabilitation, focused exercise physiologist, through to a specialist naturopath that works with a lot of my people that have specific level conditions that require a whole nother level of treatment. And then I've also got another sports dietitian that I'll work with. And I've also got, Nick, who's my powerlifting guru, who has got a master's in exercise science, and he actually specializes purely and primarily in powerlifting. So I've got a lot of athletes that will do powerlifting in the off season, which help build the physique. So literally, yes, I'll have these perfect little aces in their places that support me and have certain functions, but then overarching, I work a lot.
I've got a lot of friends, even I think that people tend to think of Ali's Angels as, the Angels and the girls side of things, but
yeah, we've got a lot of boys.
There's a lot of boys as well. And then I've got a lot of male friends who follow the Ali's Angels page purely because there's just some beautiful women that you put up on there, right?
Yep.
Gorgeous girls that like high level models and all sorts of stuff, and you just jump on the page and you can see what I'm talking about. But it's just really the the level of athlete that you're creating is something that's really, really impressive to me anyway. So, you know, props for that.
It is, you know, and I take quite a high level of pride when I say this. You know, the average tenure for a client with me is 3 years. So a lot of the development you see is legitimately my work. And then what I also have, though, are clients that have been with me for 10 years. I've got a half a dozen clients that have been legitimately with me for 10 solid years. And I've got a lot of clients that will, you know, go away, have babies, come back. Guys that will go off, work mines, you know, get married, do whatever, then come back. Like it's a cyclical process, but I pride myself on the fact that I have a really great retention rate and I have a great return rate. So, you know, I think that says a lot. And I love getting to know people's physiques and their, you know, biological function as intimate as I know my own, because it allows me to make these, you know, quite profound changes over time with them when they're consistently applying themselves. And we work, you know, I work with people holistically. So, you know, like, man, I'm the first person they call when shit goes south in life to talk through something or around something, or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the first person that gets the, you know, marriage proposal photos before they've sent them to their parents. Like, and I love that. You know, to me, that's what I'm doing this for. It's great being a part of people's journeys, like quite honestly, you know, I get to walk alongside them across some of the biggest milestones in life. And it's more than just a stage every time.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal, isn't it? I find, out of curiosity, there is sort of conjecture on this one, I find, but I think it's very much a straightforward. And you said mentioning with working with naturopaths, and the Ayurvedic medicine space is really phenomenal for working like taking into account someone's entire holistic picture, chemistry and otherwise. And like that's where I've always tried to bridge the gap between, you know, sports performance and naturopathy sort of thing in the way I formulate supplements. But with your guys, what's your opinion on things like, I guess one thing that I always like to hear is a myth busting thing. If people will say, oh, it's BS to talk about training people with you know, changing nutrition for body types, but I think that's incredibly relevant. And when you look at the, you know, the chemistry of an endomorph versus an ectomorph and so on, do you what when you strip someone down, you've got them there, prep clients just come to you, what are your first sort of, you know, deconstructions, I guess, when you're getting these people in front of you and going, okay, where do we need to hit first? Is that a high priority thing, you know, basal chem, or what do you...
It's probably not my highest priority, but I definitely factor it in because there are genetic conditions, right? And there is predispositions, and more than anything, the body's going to show us what it's doing, right? And that doesn't mean that it can't be a malleable situation. So just because someone's presenting to me and they're not necessarily processing carbohydrates initially effectively now doesn't mean we can't change that, because we absolutely can and we should be, because you know, you want the body to be able to tap into both fuel stores being, you know, carbohydrate and, you know, fat oxidation. They really should be metabolically flexible. So my goal is always to create metabolic flexibility. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm keto because I'm fat, I'm going to be like, well, let's change that, because that's just rubbish. Like, we shouldn't, you know, this shouldn't be the way things are. But you can't make those changes drastically straight away, right? So it might be a transitional strategy to the way you're going to, you know, optimize someone's current situation. I always look at the history first. You know, you can't go anywhere forward until you understand the past and at least their approach and what they've been doing and how that's not working for them, because largely most of the time it's not. And then what needs to happen there moving forward. I like to always have full examinations done. I like to have, you know, an understanding of their full hormone profile, where they're sitting, any deficiencies, if there's medications involved. Like, we go through the whole gamut, right? I look at those things first and the lifestyle variables and impact. Then if we're still having perhaps situational, you know, or a circumstance where we're not getting the changes I would see, or there's stuff not necessarily adding up and you know they're being compliant, you know there's other stuff going on, then I might start drilling down into some of the other layers for where you can go with it. But, you know, first things first, I think low-lying fruit, immediate lifestyle variables, and then, you know, most recent historical data first is what I sort of go to. But I'm not going to say that it's not relevant, because I think that it very much can be. And I think that you can see genetic dispositions, but I also think genetic disposition sometimes can come in the form of nature and nurture. So I think sometimes the genetic might look genetic, but realistically they're an apple because of their prolonged historical way of eating, because that's the way the family has, you know, skilled them from childhood. So I don't always necessarily go, okay, well, you're an apple because you're an apple genetically. I might go, you're an apple because you're an apple genetically, perhaps, but also let's peel back the layers of your historical understanding about nutrition and maybe increase your nutritional literacy and see if we can correct that situation, because, you know, it can be done.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah.
And speaking of food, I'm starting to feel really guilty about that your food sitting there. So what I might do is I might
It smells
just
good, bro.
yeah, well, we'll let you eat that in a minute. Well, what I might do is I might get us to wrap up a little bit, and maybe to leave people with a final thought, something to think about. Maybe people who are struggling with maybe chronic pain or maybe coming back from an injury. What is a message that you'd like to, I guess, wrap the whole episode up for the listeners?
Oh God, it's a tough one. I could talk underwater, so we could be leaving a few messages in a bottle here. Look, I don't know. I think first things first is one day at a time. Like if you're a chronic pain sufferer, one day at a time. And I think that, looking at your day, and this also goes for beginners, one day at a time. You can't sort of go in and start something and be like 4 days in, I'm not like 10 kilos lighter, I'm throwing this out the window. You've got to go one day at a time. And it's consistency applied with effort over time that gives you results. Would probably be my take-home message. So don't give up, don't give in. That goes for overcoming chronic pain. If you have a good day, you might have a bad day the next day. Don't give up through your bad day. Just keep applying the consistency of your rehabilitation, ticking the boxes. Or if you're in a new plan, keep applying the consistency of turning up whether you want to or not, ticking the boxes. Because in time, that in itself will end up leading to an outcome and a result that will, be exactly what you're chasing. It just doesn't happen overnight. So I'd say patience, consistency, and ticking the boxes even on the days where you don't feel like doing what you got to do is where you're going to see the sweet spot. I mean, magic doesn't just happen overnight. You still got to work at it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's an absolutely beautiful note to leave people on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, Ali. Thanks so much for giving us. Me. Yeah, it really we do appreciate your time. I know that you've got a lot on. You've got probably 400 emails to write back to now with people's updates for the week, so whatever it is. But thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Ali. Cheers.